My name's Paul Bestall. This is Mysteries and Monsters on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. Welcome to this week's Mysteries and Monsters podcast. So, this is our debut episode on the Paranormal UK Radio Network, and I'm delighted to bring Mysteries and Monsters to the platform. It's a big thank you to the team over there for wanting us to be part of their catalogue, and we look forward to a long and successful partnership, so I hope you enjoy the show from here on in. For anyone joining us for the first time, welcome. My show delves into a variety of topics, and in our previous episodes we've covered UFOs, Bigfoot, flying monsters, conspiracies and cryptozoology. I've been fortunate enough to talk with some incredibly talented and dedicated authors, investigators and researchers from around the world. Over the next few weeks we've got interviews covering thylacines, cryptids, ghosts and mysteries, so I hope you enjoy what we've got lined up for you coming up. I'm also going to be appearing on the Secret Door podcast in the next couple of weeks. I had a chat with Melissa Martell over there in Canada recently, and we discussed poltergeist, which is one of my big passions. So I hope you get a chance to catch that, and I'll share that on social media once the episode's been released. This week's episode sees me talk to author and researcher Robert Robertson, and we discuss his book Legend Tripping, as well as covering skunk apes, Bigfoot, lake monsters and ghosts, so I hope you enjoy our chat. You can find us on Facebook at Facebook/Mysteries and Monsters, as well as on Twitter. We're on Instagram, and you can subscribe to our show on YouTube as well. You can also support us on Patreon, and you can drop us an email at mysteriesandmonsters@gmail.com with any feedback, interview requests, or just to say hello. Now it's time for this week's episode. If I mention the term legend tripping, I'm sure one name will immediately spring to mind: Robert Robertson. With a 21-year army career under his belt, Robert has been able to indulge in his love of the weird by investigating a wide range of phenomena across a variety of paranormal and cryptozoological subjects. An author and investigator with a myriad of conference and TV appearances, Robert has a genuine passion for answers to some of the biggest mysteries of our time. Robert, thank you so much for joining me today. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on the show.
My pleasure. So, 21 years in the army.
Yes.
You had a very varied career, I believe. You've been quite a few places around the world.
Yeah, that's correct.
It's a bit of a career change, but I suppose as well it's kind of given you a really good grounding to dive into this love of legend tripping and monster hunting for you.
To be honest, I've been into it since I was a kid. I mean, I was, my mother, who's from Edinburgh, Scotland, told me stories about the Loch Ness Monster, and that kind of got it. And then, of course, there was in the 70s, the Bigfoot movies started coming on in the movie theaters, and that just kind of kept my interest going. Of course, to be honest with you, it kind of scared me, and I didn't like really being scared of stuff, so I started reading about it, and when I was living in England and stuff, we went to some places that were, reputed to be haunted, like Fountains Abbey. When my cousins and me went, and we also made a jaunt up to Loch Ness when I was there one time. Unfortunately, we were only up there for about a couple hours. But back to that, then the TV show that came on in America called In Search Of, narrated by Leonard Nimoy, and it's kind of, And then I like visiting Ripley's Believe It or Not places, their museums.
Yeah.
it just kind of kept going from there. It's always been an interest of mine. And, as I got older, it kind of turned from an interest into a fascination to what it is now, a passion.
Yeah. I mean, was it a conscious decision? Because it seems like a bit of a leap to go from, a distinguished career that you had. Or was it something that you thought, well, you've done your service, now you're going to indulge yourself and really pour some fuel on this passion of yours and chase these things down?
Well, like you said, in the military, I didn't really have time to go out and look. I mean, I was a military policeman, and it was a place, trying to, like the 82nd Airborne and all that. And unfortunately, I was deployed a lot overseas. But I did, continue to read on the subject. But, when I did retire, one of the reasons I wanted to come to Florida was that Florida has a rich history of unexplained places and events and things like that. And, coming out of the military, it did afford me the opportunity to go to these places that I wanted to go to. Like I said, I made myself a bucket list.
Yeah.
And once I retired, I started, checking off stuff on the bucket list.
So when you as you said, you kind of kept your interest up through reading throughout your career and those type of things. And when you got to that point, you drew up a bucket list. What was the first thing you thought? Right, what was your number one thing that you wanted to go and do first of all?
Well, what I wanted to do when my first legend trip, believe it or not, was in high school. And I believe it was 1981. I took some friends over to Louisiana, Missouri to go look for Momo, the Missouri's version of Bigfoot.
Yeah.
That was unfortunately we did not plan very well. We didn't take stuff that we needed to go to, and the town wasn't very receptive of me asking around about it. But as far as when I came out of the military and came to Florida, I wanted to go look was for the Florida skunk ape, which is Florida's Bigfoot. Because, Florida is up there with Bigfoot sightings just like California and Oregon. And, in fact, the history of the skunk ape actually goes further back than the history of Bigfoot. And that's actually more of the fact that, European settlers settled in Florida sooner than they had settled on the West Coast. So that I think I might attribute to some of those stories.
Yeah. I mean, I've always found the skunk ape a fascinating sub-part of the whole Bigfoot myth, because everything I've read, and obviously we've had 2 or 3 notable photos and videos of skunk apes, allegedly. I'll use the word allegedly. It doesn't mean I disagree with it, but I'm just putting it in there.
I understand perfectly.
But I've found it compared to some of the other versions of varieties or regional types of the hominids that people as you've referred to there, Momo, who I've also spoke to about. I interviewed Lyle Blackburn about his book on the subject, which was absolutely brilliant.
Awesome person, awesome, one of the best investigators I've ever met.
Yeah, he's an absolute gent as well. He's a multifaceted man. He's one of those people that's so talented it's quite sickening. I think
yes, he is.
He's a brilliant writer. He's a great musician. He's an all-round nice guy. So yeah, damn him.
He is. He's a super nice guy.
But I mean, for most people, I think that their key experience of the skunk ape is those legendary photos that were taken just before Christmas. I think 2000.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what?
You mean the Maika skunk ape photos?
Absolutely, yeah.
I'm now quick lowdown on the story, which you probably heard. The Sarasota police received an envelope with 2 photos and a letter. There was no return address, and it appears to be written by some people think it was written by a little old lady. And she never once calls it the skunk ape. She just refers it to some kind of an ape that she's in her backyard. But again, she did not leave a return address. So, I always tell people the jury's still out on that one. I'm not going to totally kick it to the curb. But most investigators I know think that it's a hoax.
Mm.
So, but I keep it out there just in case, because I mean it does look like a real animal.
Mm. I think that's what's the strange thing about those pictures, Robert, is it's a very strikingly looking animal, and it's very distinctively different, I think, from what people would consider to be a Bigfoot. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't look like it's supposed to.
Well, yeah, I'll be honest with you. I've talked to people who in my opinion have seen something, and some of them, because I showed them the Maika photo, said it looked nothing. What they saw looked nothing like what they saw. Mm. In fact, the animal they saw said it had a very human-looking face, compared to the Maika skunk ape. I mean, I'll be honest with you. There's back in the 40s and stuff, they made a lot of those jungle pictures down here in Florida.
Yeah.
And animal control on the set was not what it used to be. I mean, we still have spider monkey sightings over in Okeechobee.
Yeah.
And there's a monkey land down near Homestead, and there are people that do keep primates as pets.
Yep.
And it is possible that because it does, the Maika photo does look somewhat like an orangutan.
Yeah, very much so.
And it is possible that this was somebody's pet that got loose, and the fact that it was been living out there, it's got all shaggy and looking, and and I mean, there's 18 different species of orangutan out there.
Yeah.
Not all of them looks like that orangutan out of those Clint Eastwood movies.
Clyde. Yeah.
Yeah, Clyde. So I mean, like I said, I always tell people the jury's still out on that one.
Yeah, I mean, it is a peculiar thing, and to be fair, nothing surprises me that can be found in Florida, because I think
true.
Even as a resident, Robert, I'm sure you're aware that it seems every other month there's something weird's turned up, or some kind of non-native species has been found to be breeding population. I think that they're having a real problem with monitor lizards, aren't you, at the moment out there, on top of everything else you've had recently?
Yeah, believe it or not, when I first moved here, and I got buddy with a fish and wildlife guy, and he brought up the Nile monitor, and it's funny because he's telling me down in Cape Coral, which is near Naples, Florida, and he was telling me a story where a lady had got chased on her roof by what she called a large dinosaur-looking lizard, and she called her husband. And he came back home real quick and saw this thing take off. He said the thing was huge. I'm not saying gigantic, but he said it was bigger than any lizard he ever saw. And the fish and wildlife guys told me that these things like to eat cats.
Yeah. And
the thing was on the property stalking the lady's cat when she saw it, and she got on top of the roof. But, quick answer, yeah, there is a problem with Nile monitors, and, they breed quite well down in the Everglades, like the Burmese python, which we do have a bit of a problem with those. Not as big as people think, but we do have a problem.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those, I mean, it's for somebody who's only visited Florida as a tourist, Robert, I think it's one of those things you just don't, because you're essentially not involved in the normal ecology of the state, really, and I think once you kind of get away from your major cities or tourist traps, it's like a different world. It's such a lush environment. It's almost subtropical in the way it kind of interacts, and it's the animals and fauna that are out there.
Well, you want to hear something ironic? About 45 minutes up the road from Orlando, from Disney World, it's a place called the Green Swamp. It's north of Lakeland, and they have had a large number of skunk ape sightings out there. I mean, some of the first skunk ape sightings to make the newspaper were happened out in the Green Swamp. And again, that's just right up the road from Disney World.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing about that, I mean, obviously another famous skunk ape story is the bus tour that. Did the bus break down, or did they stop for some reason? And I think there's about 30 or 40 people claim to have seen this weird creature by the side of the road.
Oh, yeah, that was down near Ochopee. Yeah, I can't remember what the status of the bus was, but you're right. The thing came walking right out in front of him and walked across the road. I've been out to that location numerous times, and I've been out there in the nighttime. And only problem is, thing right next to it is a canal, and every time I've been down there, there's been quite a bit of alligators out there. So you may not see a skunk ape, but by golly, you're going to see an alligator.
I mean, to be fair, Robert, I think anybody that goes cryptid hunting in Florida is probably it's not just the fact you're looking for legendary creatures. There are some ferocious animals just lying in wait, as I'm sure anybody would be. And as you refer to, the alligator population is probably the most well known of them.
Well, yeah, we got panthers. We do have bears. They're not as large as the bears that are located up up north and stuff, but we do have bears. We have wild pigs, boars. Mm-hmm. In fact, I always when I go out, I believe it or not, I don't take a firearm with me. I take bear mace with me because I found bear mace works on everything. Bears to panthers to snakes to maybe someday it might be a skunk ape. I might have to spray it at. I do know it works on people. My son accidentally started shooting a whole bunch of that and got me with it one time out there. And I tell you, it's nasty stuff. Absolutely. But it does work.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, I think that's good advice. I think that's one of the striking things about your book as well, Robert, Legend Tripping.
Yes.
Is the fact that it's a very practical book in regards to that. You're one of the few writers dealing with these kind of subjects that delves into the preparation side of what you need to do. And I found that both really interesting and rather fascinating, that you basically give people a checklist and what to plan for. Do you think that's something that, we're aware of several cases where, amateur people have turned up looking for certain legends and things and sadly ended up losing their life? I think the Goatman Bridge incident was a couple of years ago, because I think that's a train bridge, isn't it?
It is. It's an active train bridge. It's still get used. There's still trains that go across that bridge. I've been out to it before.
Yeah, and so I think it's one of those things that people just don't take into consideration. I think they get caught up in the in the mystery or the search and fail to prepare at all. So was there a conscious decision when you decided to write your book?
Well, absolutely. I had been going out and I'm dealing with people that weren't going out prepared. I mean, I think, it's part of my military background that I always like to be prepared when I go out and do anything. And even if I go out on a day hike, I go out there with everything in case something should happen and I'm stuck there overnight. But I always try to tell people, you always go prepared. I mean, you need to, sometimes go back. If you're going to go out Bigfoot hunting or go out in the woods and stuff, you need to know the basics on how to be out there, how to start a fire, and, equipment to signal people in case you do get lost. In fact, when I take young adults with me and young kids, I always put a necklace around their neck that has a flashlight and a whistle. And I say, if you ever get separated from us, I want you to start blowing this whistle. And if it's at nighttime, I want you to turn that light on. Because with night vision goggles, you can pick up any source of light out there. But I always tell people, too, if you ever get lost, just stop right there. Don't keep walking, stop, and just blow that whistle. And luckily, I've never had anybody get lost. So, and I attribute you mostly because when I do take people out, we do a lot of daytime walking around to get familiar with the area. And when nighttime comes, they're already, they do know the area. And we have certain places that we go to. I make sure everybody's got, a flashlight and a backup flashlight. And we always go in teams. I don't like people going out there by themselves. I think that's, especially here in Florida, I don't think that's very safe to go do that. Yeah. But, the book I tried to make it very practical. I didn't try to use big, huge words to try to dazzle people with my, fancy words. I want it down and dirty. If a person says, I want to know how to go look for Bigfoot, They pick up that, read that chapter, and say, okay, this is how I'm supposed to go do it. Not this. Well, Mr. Robinson tells us all about how, everything about, all of this stuff, And I even tell people I'm not an expert on this thing. If I was to say I'm an expert on Bigfoot or the skunk ape, then I should be able to produce to you a skunk ape. Like Jane Goodall was an expert on gorillas. But if you went to her, hey, Jane, could you show me some gorillas? She could take you out in the jungle and she could show you gorillas. I mean, I'm very knowledgeable. I'm a top investigator in my field, but I don't consider anybody out there an expert on Bigfoot.
Yeah.
But I can. Some people on the top end of being a researcher. Lyle Blackburn, Ken Gerhardt, Nick Redfern, David Weatherly, very top people in their field of cryptozoology or legend tripping.
Absolutely, and a high praise indeed, because I've been very fortunate. The only person out of that list you've not mentioned is I've not had the opportunity to speak to yet is Nick Redfern. So I've been very, very fortunate to speak to those gentlemen. I'm a big fan of all their work, to be fair. I think that, like you say, they are fantastic researchers and very successful authors in their own right as well, Robert. They are certainly continuing to push the boundaries of what we would call cryptozoology these days, I think.
No, absolutely. I look forward to every time they put a new book out.
Oh, big time, very much so. I got, I was very lucky to get David's last, but I haven't got his new one, his Eerie Companions, which looks a bit spooky. But his Silver State and Gold and Copper State Monsters books were absolutely fabulous, really good.
Yeah, I got to write for his Woodknocks Volume 3. I got to write the chapter on the skunk ape.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, I was really thrilled that he asked me to do that for him.
Yeah, they are excellent. I was mentioning that I'm a big. That's how I first came across David's work. Actually, I got the first one. So I really enjoyed your chapter on the skunk ape. It was fantastic.
Oh, and it's still growing. I'm still trying to put together a book on the skunk ape. I ran into a couple corners on some old investigators that are not with us now, and I'm trying to find out what happened to their research material. But the book's still going on. I'm still recording sightings and stuff.
Yeah. So would you say that it's is it a locality reason, Robert, that you're focusing on that, or is it just the one that's kind of fired your enthusiasm the most over the years, and it's the one that you think you could, tangibly have a bit more about it?
I would say the location. I'm here in Florida, and I know all the investigators here in Florida. The ISRT, Independent Sasquatch Research Team, and the Florida Bigfoot investigators. I'm friends with all those people that do that. Now that a lot of people know who I am, people have been bringing me sightings and telling me stories. But I'm trying to find. There was a lady in the 60s and 70s, Ramona Clark Hibner, and she died, I believe, in 1986. And she was probably the top investigator of the skunk ape, but she didn't like it getting called a skunk ape. She liked to refer to it as the Yeti. Yeah, that's what she liked calling it as. But she did an enormous amount of investigating, and she sent a lot of her research to John Green.
Yes.
And John published some of her stuff, but some of it didn't get published, and I'm trying to find out where it's at.
I mean, that could be a treasure trove of unpublished work there, Robert, really,
yes.
Couldn't it?
Yes, it is. Like I said, I'm still lurking. I ran into one guy, and he wasn't very hospitable to me. Thought for some reason I was an FBI agent, and I was going to take him to jail. He was, he's one of those conspiracy guys, and tried to assure him that I was just, no, I wasn't in the FBI.
I mean, it is something I've found interesting. That obviously, as perhaps your reputation has grown, Robert, do you think it's become easier for you to track these stories down now?
Yes, it is now. When I first got on board, it was, strictly on the internet, and then I met some other people that did it, and I met Matt Moneymaker from PFO, and he helped out a lot. And then I teamed up with Stacy Brown Jr. He's one of the investigators here in Florida, and I've had a lot of success doing investigations with him. and also done some work with the ISRT in Independent Sasquatch Research Team. They're here in Florida, and we've had some pretty good stuff going on with them. So, but again, the book's a work in progress right now.
Excellent. Well, that's certainly something to look forward to. And I think it's one of those subjects as well, because I think it deserves a lot more investigation for me, Robert, because I think that there seems to be such a history of stories, because obviously it goes back to the days of the Muskokie and the Seminole tribes. This is not a modern creature, as you refer to, because of the settling of Florida probably before most of the other western seaboard. Yet these stories and legends have been handed down through the tribes for generations, haven't they?
They have. In fact, to be honest with you, the Seminoles kind of stole some of the legends from the Muskokie and another tribe down here. But I mean, the stories are still the same. They just kind of, when they came down to Florida and they integrated with the other tribes, they kind of they heard the stories and they just kind of made them part of their lore. But the Native Americans have a rich history. In fact, a lot of them are just kind of like, yeah, it's here. I mean, they wholeheartedly believe that the animal's out there. In fact, they pretty much tell us we need to leave it alone.
Yeah, and I think that's quite striking, because whether it's the northwest of Canada or the US as well, that tradition is there as well. As far as they're concerned, yeah, it's a matter of fact. It's not for discussion.
That's true.
I think it's sometimes frustrating, because and it's the same probably in Australia with the Yowie, because obviously there's a long history of Aborigine stories regarding the Yowie and its behaviours and such like, and the creature itself. And I find it frustrating in some regards that these old stories and legends, some of them obviously, are taken, that we have evidence of certain creatures and we know that they exist. Yet these stories of hairy men and tall men living out in the woods are just completely dismissed by certain skeptics. Yet they'll take other aspects of native legends and accept them on what they are, which I've never really understood.
Well, that's a good question, because one of the questions I get asked, how come we haven't found bones? And I said, well, to be honest with you, if we found bones, then we'd know exactly what this animal is. It's like, well, anytime you go in the woods, you don't really find bones of any really animals, maybe, a rabbit or something like that. But these animals, for the most part, shy away from humans. So that's another, even the Yeti, they, for a long time, up there, the Sherpa, all those people reported seeing it. And I mean, it's a matter of fact that it's out there, but, science and, dismisses it being there. But now recently they had that show where they were examining water and they came up with an unknown human, primate and detected in the water. So now they're starting to look at that. China has the Yeren, in theirs, and that, again, people that live there, it's, Malaysia has a large hairy creature there that they firmly believe there. I mean, these animals are seen all over Russia has the Almista.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of ironic that we have stories of large hairy primate or hairy men seen all over the world, yet science doesn't, dismisses it. I mean, well, then again, they dismissed the gorilla until it was actually seen. So I guess, it's one of those things, until we find it. In fact, I had a scientist I was talking to over at a college, and he told me, he said, there's nothing in science saying they can't be there. He's saying, but, once you guys find them for us, we'll go ahead and start taking it serious. But he said, he said, that's why we have you guys out there looking for it.
Well, especially in Florida, Robert, I think they'll be glad if anybody else is doing it for them, I would suspect. So, on top of, obviously, the skunk ape, what other cryptids have kind of fired you up over the years? Have you been fortunate enough to travel anywhere else in the world to try and, alleviate any of these other creatures that fires up your imagination?
Well, I've been up to South Carolina where the lizard man was seen, but again, really, that I didn't meet with too much cooperation from the people in the town there. They kind of didn't really think there was anything out there. I've been up to the Pine Barrens, and where the Jersey Devil makes his home. Mm-hmm. That is a huge area. I mean, that's a big area up there. I've been over to Louisiana, where the Honey Island Swamp Monster, and of course I made it over to Falk, Arkansas, where they made that 1972 movie, The Legend of Boggy Creek. Yeah. Which is a very, every Bigfooter out there has seen this movie and holds it pretty dear, including myself. And I got to go over there and walk around that area. I've been up to Pennsylvania, where my wife's from, and we did some walking around and looking around up in that area. I've been up to Arizona, but we really didn't get to go look the way I wanted to. It's kind of funny. We went to a couple towns that had a history of sightings, and but who knows? I got another summer coming up. I got injured a couple of years ago, and I've had to. Unfortunately, I didn't heal up as fast as I would like to have. So I'm kind of. But I mean, I can get out there and walk around. I just can't, wear a big heavy pack on my back when I go walking out there. So I have to limit myself to where I go walking around now.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm going to say Pennsylvania just seems to be a magnet for weirdness.
Well, New Jersey, actually, if I was to pick a state, New Jersey's the weirdest.
Yeah. Do you think that's because it's a variety of phenomena across different subjects, Robert?
Absolutely, absolutely.
So what did you? I mean, because I'm aware that it's obviously got a history of mysterious big cats up there. There's numerous haunted locations as well in New Jersey. So do you think it's why do you think certain states are spookier than others?
Well, that's a good question. I guess I would say because of the how long we've had people or structures and stuff in place there. Like we have St. Augustine down here in Florida, and it's considered one of the most haunted cities in the United States. And next, you got Savannah up in Georgia, and then you got places up in Pennsylvania, Gettysburg. The battlefield up there is supposedly rich in paranormal activity up there. And but I'll be honest with you, as far as paranormal goes, every state has a place that has had some good paranormal locations to go do ghost hunts, and like Bigfoot's been seen all over the United States, every place except Hawaii. Yeah. But and almost every lighthouse in the United States, almost I've actually come across two that haven't, that actually have a history of paranormal activity.
Yeah, there is something about lighthouses. I remember watching a program. I think, strangely enough, it might have been about lighthouses in New England. And there seems to be a lot of broken-hearted people who end up living in lighthouses for some reason by going on some of these stories. So,
yeah.
Do you think it's because it's the type of building it is? They're usually quite isolated, Robert. They tend to sort of attract an air of mystery due to what the lighthouse's role was, and it's in olden days, the light keepers would go there for days on end and do shifts away from anyone, wouldn't they?
Yeah, sometimes they would. I mean, there's a couple in France where they have to, take them out by a boat, and they stay out there for, I don't know, a couple weeks at a time. But, like I say, like you said at the beginning, lighthouses have always had a history of paranormal, even in the olden times when they were first built. But a lot of times, there's been like some tragedies, some family members killed. Like the one we have down here in St. Augustine, the lighthouse keeper's daughters were killed. And supposedly, certain nights and stuff, you can hear the girls laughing and talking, at night when there's nobody there. And, some people have said they've seen little girls walking around there. But it's kind of, unique, but, I always tell people, a guaranteed place to go do a ghost hunt would be a lighthouse. That, a lot of these lighthouses have gotten, smart about it, and they actually charge you some money to go do it, and sometimes it can be kind of costly.
Yeah, I mean, that is the one negative side to it. I mean, obviously these days it's prevalent on, a variety of channels and certain series of, are known the world over in regards to this. And I think in some aspects that's been quite detrimental to the field, I think, Robert, because, like you say, I'm always suspicious of a haunted pub, primarily because it's a business.
Well, yeah. Ironically, when I was in Savannah a couple of years ago with my wife, we went into an old antique store, and you can see this was clearly an old building, And I asked the owner, I said, is this place haunted? And he goes, ironically, no, it's not. And I said, oh. He says, he goes, 10 years ago, none of these buildings were haunted, But all of a sudden, the whole ghost thing craze took place, and then all of a sudden everybody started saying, yeah, my building's haunted too. But he said it was ironic where nobody said anything about their residents being haunted. But when they smelt money coming, they charge people to come in and do a ghost hunt, But there are places down there in Savannah that do actually have a long history of paranormal. So I'm not gonna totally ditch Savannah and say it's all made up. Some of the places out there you really need to look at the history behind the sightings,
Yeah, and I suppose it's quite refreshing to meet somebody who says, yes, I live in an old building, but no, it's not haunted.
Oh, yeah, I mean, like I said, we went to this one lighthouse near Daytona Beach, and I remember asking the lady, is it haunted? And she says, yeah, no, we're not. We're one of the few lighthouses that isn't haunted. I went, oh. And I mean, I've been to some places that, there's a place down in the Pottsville, Pennsylvania, right next to where the Yingling beer factory is. It's called the Harry Packer House, and this place looks like it should be haunted. I mean, in fact, I found out this was the house they used as a model for the Haunted Mansion in Disney World. And I went in there and we talked to the people that owned it, and I said, oh, is this place haunted? And he said, no, it's not. And I went, seriously? This place looks haunted. It's got to be haunted. She goes, no. She started laughing. It's not. She says, it's a bed and breakfast, but no, we've never had anybody ever told us that they've seen anything out of the ordinary or heard anything. So, no, it's not haunted. But ironically, up the road in the town of Jim Thorpe, which is not even half a mile up the road, there's an old called the Carbon County Jail, where there's a handprint on the wall where these Irish workers were hung, and one of them declared that he was innocent, and he put his handprint on the wall, and he says, to prove I'm innocent, that handprint's going to stay there. And to this day, if you go in that that jail, which is now a museum, you can still see the handprint, and it won't come off.
Wow, I think I've seen something about that. It is very odd, because I think it's one of those things where they've tried cleaning it off and things,
yes.
and it won't go away. It's permanently there.
Yeah, well, now unfortunately, you go there, they won't let you into the actual cell. You have to look through the cage to see it, because they don't want people putting their hands on it and stuff. So I mean, you can see it. I mean, it's really, when you walk in, you can look around, look through the bars, and see the handprint quite clear as day. And but it's it's a really interesting story, and I mean, that's one story that's been going around since back when it happened. It's not something that just recently was made up.
Yeah, I mean, it is very peculiar. I mean, we've got a place here in Sheffield, which advertises it's closed down recently, but it was the most haunted pub in Sheffield, and it was quite interesting that the pub across the road kind of used a negative advertising on the back of it, which basically said the only spirits you'll find here are behind the bar. So they were being quite dismissive, and ironically the pub that doesn't have any ghosts is still open. So make of that what you will, but it does seem that, like you say, where you would expect places to be haunted, I find it incredibly refreshing when someone doesn't play that game and says, oh no, there's nothing here at all. But I don't think sometimes the age of a building is any indication really. Anyway, Robert, have you found that have you come across more recent hauntings in newer builds than you would suspect?
Well, Jupiter Lighthouse down in the town of Jupiter.
Mm?
In fact, this is ironic. We went down there a number of years ago with my wife's family, and it's on an active Coast Guard base, and it's built on an old Native American or old Indian burial ground area. Mm. Well, when we went in there, we went to the top, me and my kids and my wife, and I heard somebody coming up the stairs. And initially I thought it was my mother-in-law because she was the only one who didn't go up with us. Mm. But I looked down, and I saw her sitting on a bench. And I said, well, who's coming up the stairs? And I poked my head inside, and I didn't see anybody. And then I heard the noise stop. Mm. And then I looked over, and my daughter goes, who's that coming up the stairs? I said, there's nobody in here. And she kind of looks down, too, and I went, huh, that's how weird. Maybe it was the wind or something. So we go back, and once again we hear like something's coming up the stairs. Mm. And I go back in there, and I look back down again, and I don't see anything. And I said, well, I looked over at everybody, and they're looking at me because they all hear the noise too. I said, I'm going to go down and find out what's making that noise, just to make my,
Yeah.
Sure, it has to be some logical explanation. So I walk down there, and I'm looking around, and I don't see anything that could be making the noise. I grab the bars every now and then the stairs, and I shake them a little bit to see if they're loose and stuff. Mm. And I get all the way to the bottom, and my mother-in-law is sitting there, still sitting at the bench, and she goes, what are you down here? I said, I heard something going up the bench. She goes, yeah, I heard it too. I thought it was the wind. Well, once again, when I come out, they yell down. They can hear somebody coming up the stairs, and it sounds like it's almost at the top. Mm. I run back in there, and I look up, and I don't see anything, and I hogtail it back up to the top. And again, we don't find anything to make that noise. Well, long story short, we come downstairs, and I go into the gift shop, and I make a comment to the cashier. I said, yeah, we heard sound like something was coming up the stairs. I didn't see anything. He goes, oh yeah, supposedly this place is haunted, and we've had some people say the same thing, that they've heard something going up the stairs and stuff, and yeah, but we don't really know what it is. But yeah, we've been told, And I said, has anybody ever done an investigation? She goes, no, because it's an active Coast Guard base. We can't have people coming on here. We're allowed to open the lighthouse for a certain period of time during the day for tourists, but other than that, we don't let anybody else in here. I said, oh, okay. But I thought that was ironic, because the lighthouse is not that old.
Yeah. So is there a history of any indication of how that experience has occurred, Robert? Has there been?
No, in fact, to be honest with you, my wife went and researched it, but I never did get back with her and ask her if she heard anything other than that it was supposedly a native burial ground, supposedly somewhere in the area where the lighthouse was. I'm not going to say that it was actually that the lighthouse was built on the burial ground, because I may be wrong on that one. But I do know they said that area was occupied by the Native Americans before the Coast Guard took over and built a lighthouse there.
Yeah, and it's a very unusual phenomenon as well, because footsteps are a very distinct sound, especially in that kind of building, Robert. So they're not, like you said, it's not like anybody could kind of be messing around running up and down, because usually a lighthouse, the staircase goes from the bottom to the top, and that's it.
Correct. And this was during the day. It wasn't a nighttime thing. And the kids, my family said, yeah, we could hear you walking up there clearly. And then when you get, and then we could hear something else walking up there. It sounded just like you. I went, wow, that's pretty neat.
Yeah, big time.
Unfortunately, I didn't have anything to record it at the time, because when we went there strictly as tourists to go on top of the lighthouse, look around.
Yeah, which is probably took advantage of that, Robert.
Yeah, absolutely.
Your reputation preceded you. It was ready for you, sir. So, in regards to that kind of paranormal, would you say that's probably the strangest thing you've come across in regards to a haunting, or have you come across anything else as strange as that you just couldn't find a rational explanation for?
I've been on numerous ghost hunts. I'm trying to remember some. We did one of an old school in Bartow, and my wife picked up some talking on her recorder, and we had been given the keys to go in that night, and we were the only people there. And this school is a really old school. I mean, it goes back to the 1800s. And a portion of it is still being used, believe it or not. I mean, that's how well built this school is. Wow. And the auditorium has a history of paranormal. In fact, the custodial workers, janitors, will clean up that area in the daytime because they don't want to be there at nighttime because they keep hearing things and stuff, and they hear laughter and stuff like that. So me and the wife got the keys, and we took a couple other paranormal investigators with us, and we set up shop. We didn't really hear anything until, the next morning when we were going through the recordings, and we picked up some stuff. So that was pretty weird. When I was filming a TV show, we did one of a high, and we watched something move the camera. Me and the camera guy were sitting there waiting. They were filming another scene, and we were just sitting on the couch, and we were just talking, me and him, and we looked over and the camera just moves. And I looked at him and said, "Did that thing move?" He goes, "Yeah." So we both jumped up real quick to see what moved the camera. We thought maybe somebody had hit the table or whatever, and the table was pretty solid, pretty big, solid table, and we couldn't get it to move. Me and him tried everything we could to get it to move, and we couldn't get it to move. So, I mean, the house had a reputation of being haunted by an old man that had committed suicide in there. So, it's quite possible, something did, paranormal or a ghost move that camera. But it was a really obvious move. It wasn't just a it moved to where both me and him just immediately stopped talking and looked right at it, And the thing was the camera was in front of us.
How strange. I mean, it's one of those things as well, I think. One of the things I find refreshing about your work, Robert, as well, is that you always try to look for logical explanations. Well, I think,
as a military policeman, when you go to things, you always kind of look and unfortunately I have found even good people may not always tell the truth, especially when you put a camera out in front of them. You tell them they're going to be on TV, their Bigfoot sighting will suddenly change on it, and all of a sudden they went from where they saw a shape to where, I clearly saw its face and I saw its teeth and all that. And I was like, hold on now, just a minute ago before I had the camera on, you were just saying you barely saw a shape out there, and you're saying you saw it, so. I'm wary of that, people that, just want to be on TV. And, there's some things that just, you go back and just kind of look at it a little bit, and you do find out, there is a logical explanation why, something did happen the way it did happen. And my wife's very good at that. She's very good at, especially, when it comes to paranormal stuff. She really likes to, I'm not going to say debunk it, because she does believe in it, but she also, looks at the logical aspect. And I told one person, I do keep an open mind, but I don't keep it so open that my brains fall out.
Yeah, it's how I tend to look at these kind of things is probably in a very similar vein to yourself and your wife then, Robert, because I think it's a lot harder to basically just accept something on face value, especially when, as you say, someone claims something, or there's a business behind it, or there's, there could be some kind of financial incentive, shall we say, for something to get a reputation for whatever reason. So I think it's the only thing we can do if we really want to sort of investigate and prove certain things are out there. You've got to try and eliminate as much as you possibly can, haven't you?
Absolutely. There's times when I come in there and I realize that there's nothing here, I've done plenty of paranormal investigations where nothing happened, We were in one that was supposed to be a ghost of a naked lady. And I definitely stayed awake for that one, but unfortunately it showed up, So that was a bummer on that one. But I mean, if you were to ask me, do I believe in, unknown animals, paranormal, UFOs, and mysterious places, the answer is yes. But I don't necessarily believe everything everybody tells me. And I guess that's part of my military police background. But I have met people who I have, wholeheartedly have seen something. And I'll tell you, people that do see these, Bigfoot, I mean, it's a life-changing event for them.
Yeah.
I had a lady, and boy, she was just in tears talking about it. And I tell you, she could tell me everything to such detail, that I thoroughly believe that she saw something that. And the funny part was, it was her husband took her out hunting. It was her first time out hunting, and it was up near the Crystal River. And he put her in a tree stand, and then he took off and went to another area. Well, she was sitting up there. She fell asleep, and she woke up feeling something pulling on the ladder. And she looked down and saw this thing looking up at her. Big, hairy, large-looking, hairy thing with a very human-looking face. And she sat there, and they was staring at her, and she was staring at him. And then she just started screaming, and the thing just walked off. It didn't run off. It walked off. And then her husband come up, and he was, chimed in on the story, too, that it took her about an hour to get her to get off the tree stand. She was scared to death to come down. And then he got her back in there, and they got on a boat, and they came back to this restaurant where I ran into him. And the whole time she was just yelling at him, "Why did you make me do this? I'm never going hunting with you again." And he's like, "I'm sorry, dear. I'm sorry. I didn't mean for this to happen." But I mean, she described it to detail, and I mean, and I think that like I said, I've talked to some other people that one guy told me. He told me about 2 weeks after he saw it, and his son told me that the day he did see it. When they got home, the guy went right to his bed and laid down in bed. It was just like it shook him up so much,
I mean, in my experience of seeing and hearing certain witnesses, Robert, it's always the hunters or the people that are very experienced in their surroundings that always seem to be, like you say. It's as if they've gone through some kind of emotional change. It's like everything they knew about the world has been completely overturned in an instant.
Absolutely, that's true. I mean, in fact, the guy even said, I've been out here for 30 years. I heard about the story. I didn't really put much into it, and this thing comes walking right out in front of me, and looks right up at me, and and then in fact, he even he took a video of it with his cell phone, which he let me look at. And unfortunately, it's not a good video because he even said it, it was at 6 o'clock in the morning and there was mist all over the field that he was at. But, he took me to the location. We did find tracks, but it was like 2 weeks later. And the tracks were not very good. I mean, I did try to make some castings out of a couple of them, but they didn't come out very well. And ironically, somebody else had said they had seen it out in that area too. And then, when I went out with my son to go retrieve a trail camera, we had something out there screaming at me and my son. And in fact, that's that story I tell at the very beginning of the book, and where we looked to do the night vision goggles and we could see some glowing eyes looking at us. But unfortunately, I didn't have any of my gear, my bear mace with me, because all I went to go do was to go retrieve a trail camera. I was just go down this road, get the trail camera, and come back to the Jeep. And, my son had got these night vision goggles that he had got with a video game, and he brought them out just to try them out to see how well they worked. That's the reason he had the night visions with him. And lo and behold, we get something out there screaming at us, making noises in the water and growling at us. And, we turned around, we went back, and my wife and my daughter heard it too. In fact, they heard it before, and they ran back to the Jeep. And, so, that guy's story, holds what, Yeah. Again, he's never wanted to be on TV.
Yeah.
He doesn't look to, in fact, he doesn't even want me even giving out his name.
Yeah.
So, that's another reason I kind of, I believe that he saw something he couldn't explain.
Yeah. I think for some people as well, Robert, when they have these experiences, they're obviously very aware of what happens to certain other witnesses that come forward. But
Yes.
I think I kind of understand that response far more than someone wanting to be on TV. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I do.
I think it's just a more natural response, especially because I've heard several interviews with people, and notably I've heard a couple of people have interactions who were also in tree stands, which I think that seems intriguing, because obviously clearly they're out of the creature's eye line or sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is too.
And it seems a lot of people seem to have very strange experiences in tree stands. I'll be brutally honest. I wouldn't like to be stuck up one with one trying to climb up. To be fair, regardless.
Well, I'll be honest. I do plan on trying to get a tree stand to go to a location and sit out there. You know, because I mean, again, I'm out there looking for them. And then and the good thing is they're not that expensive anymore. They used to be up there like $300. Now you can get them for less than $100 now. But like you said, that I think it has something to do with the line of sight and the smell.
Yeah.
I think animals have very acute sense of senses: their sight, their smell, even their sense of their hearing. I think they have very, very acute hearing.
Yeah, very much. And let's be honest, most wild animals could be stood, 2 meters away from you, and you wouldn't have a clue they were there unless they wanted you to know they were there.
Yes, and it's kind of ironic. I was talking to a special forces guy, and he was telling me, because there's these stories about these animals supposedly have cloaking devices, and he said, well, when I was in the military special forces, if we were out in the woods, we were told if we come in contact with the enemy, we're to stop and just look down and not move. And he says most time they will not see you. It's because your eyes only pick up movement, especially out in the woods and the jungle and stuff. So, and I mean most animals today, out there, deer, what do they do when they freeze when they see you?
Yeah.
A lot of other animals do the same thing. They freeze. So you may, unless they're staring at you, where you're feeling that something's looking at you, you're not going to know they're there.
I mean, the other thing I was intrigued to discover is obviously that you've got a lot of experience of diving and swimming underwater.
Yes.
Have you considered using these talents for lake monsters, Robert?
I have always wanted to go. I mean, not always. It's on my bucket list. I want to go back to Loch Ness. I mean, to go scuba diving in Loch Ness would be like I think any monster hunter's dream come true to go do that. But here in the United States, we have Lake Champlain, where we have Champ.
Yeah.
Up in New York, near New York and Vermont. And I've been up there one time when I was in the military, coming back from a school. I had a friend of mine say, "Stop over here. I want to see Lake Champlain." Real quick on our way back out of here, so I can say that I've seen it. And who knows? Maybe some of these days I can get back up there and go scuba diving. But yeah, I mean, there's plenty of things to go see that you can use. Scuba diving as a tool to go. To do these investigations.
Absolutely. I mean, did you learn this as part of the military, and then you took it on after you'd retired and got qualified, I believe, Robert? Or was it something that you waited until you'd left the military till you wanted to sort of indulge in this skill?
I got into scuba diving when I was stationed out in Hawaii. I did strictly as on a hobby type thing, with a civilian scuba diving school. Because if you're going to be in Hawaii, you got to go scuba diving. I mean, it's a crime not to go do that if you're stationed there.
And I mean, it's another thing as well, because some people have a very natural fear of underwater, not necessarily the sea, but actually going beneath the waves in that kind of capacity. Have you had any kind of hairy brushes with anything a little bit
Well, I mean,
interesting?
yeah. Well, I mean, when I was we were doing a night dive, and I was the third man into the water off of this the diving platform, which had two pontoons on each side, and I jumped in, and I hit something, and I thought it was one of the pontoons on the side of the platform. So I nudge it with my elbow, and I noticed it kind of had it didn't feel like metal.
Yeah.
So I put the flashlight up, and I see this big patch of gray in front of me, and it's moving, and I see these stripes going down, and I realize it's a tiger shark.
Oh.
So I just I stop. I mean, I hold my breath, and I'm just like, oh, you know. I probably made that noise in the water too, just like, you know. And it just kept going by me and by me and by me. And once I saw the back fin go by me, I kicked my head up and spit out the mouthpiece and started yelling, "Shark, shark!" And the guys rushed over to the side to grab me, and I feel sorry for the first guy to reach out, because I think I dislocated his arm. I think I when he pulled down, because I mean I came out of that water faster than anything time I've ever. And I crawled right to the middle of the platform, and I tell you, and then I look over, and everybody's just with their flashlights watching the fin going around our dive raft. Wow. And eventually it leaves, and then the dive master and his assistant come up, and they're just like, "Did anybody see that shark?" And he said, "Yeah, Rob fell on it." So I mean, and unfortunately, I had to admit, I had a little bit of a fear of going into the water after that for a little while, because it really, I mean, I didn't realize how big tiger sharks could get until you're right in the water with one and watching this thing. I mean, if one guy said if I had jumped in sooner, I would have jumped in front of it. Ooh. And, this animal is obviously out feeding, so it was hungry. Yeah. But it didn't turn around and come at me. It just swam by me, and then, I was out of the water after that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing about tiger sharks as well, is I think a lot of people forget, because usually when you have a deadly or a fatal interaction with a shark, most people, it's traditionally a great white or a bull.
Yes.
But the third biggest, as far as I'm aware, the third biggest shark that's responsible for these is a tiger shark. They're not.
Tiger sharks will eat anything, whereas a great white. Great whites don't actually like the taste of humans. They'll come up and they mistake a human for a seal. They'll bite the person. Usually they bite them in half and the person dies. Yeah. But they usually don't come back and eat the person. Do you know what I'm saying? Because they don't like the smell, the taste. But, a tiger, they don't care. Yeah. Tiger will eat anything.
Yeah. Well, I've heard them described as the dumpsters of the sea.
That's correct.
Because they will, and numerous... I've heard numerous stories, and I've seen numerous tiger sharks with car registration plates in their stomachs, and just anything they can open their mouth and swallow, they will.
Well, a lot of people don't know, but catfish are actually related to the shark. And you get these gigantic catfish that sit on the bottom of these rivers and stuff in the United States, especially down in the South. Yep. And when they catch them, they find all kinds of crap in these things' mouths, because I mean, they don't care what they eat, like catfish aren't, don't come up and eat people, but, they can get pretty darn big.
Yeah. Well, there's been many a fisherman and a diver has had the misfortune of coming face to face with some, because they can get to enormous sizes, catfish.
That's correct. Yes.
And they're across the world as well. They're all over the place, especially the Wells catfish seems to be equally adaptable in any continent across the world.
And like I said, a lot of people don't realize that they are related to the shark, say species of the shark. I mean, the stingray and the mantas are also in that same family too. I mean, look at their skin. They don't have scales. They have this sandpaper type skin.
Yes, they do. I've been very fortunate to meet a manta and stroke it, and it's a very rough texture, like you say. It is very sandpapery. It just wasn't what I was expecting it to feel like at all.
Catfish, same thing. They have the same kind of skin. Except like they kind of get slippery. Yeah. I mean, they secrete some kind of, as a defensive mechanism, get slippery on you.
Yeah, absolutely.
But sharks have the same thing. Sharks have that sandpaper type skin.
Absolutely. So, in regards to that, do you think that in regards to the possibilities, because I think several people are of this train of thought, Robert, that the most likely place for us to find an undiscovered species or wherever is probably under the sea, simply because of the volume of it and the fact that we basically know next to nothing.
Well, was it 75% of the Earth is covered in water? I believe. And I may be wrong on the exact figures on that. And somebody said we know more about space than we do about what's at the bottom of the oceans. You know, we're getting, we're going down there and exploring more and more. You know, it's kind of interesting. But as far as undiscovered creatures, absolutely. I still think they discovered recently another shark.
Yep.
Discovered shark species. So, again, we don't know what's down there. I mean, the whole megalodon thing, I don't know about that. That a shark that large, I really think we would have known that a lot longer. I mean, sooner, I mean, an animal that big has to eat quite a bit to sustain itself, too. So, I mean, I do believe there was megalodon. Don't get me wrong. We've got evidence of the teeth. In fact, I've got a megalodon tooth.
Yeah.
But there is big enough sharks out there now that, the great white shark itself gets out there and stuff and gets to a really large size. As far as undiscovered species, absolutely. Loch Ness, I've always thought something is there.
Yep.
And I think people know enough about what sturgeons look like to know what a sturgeon is versus, something else.
Yep.
Because, from my understanding, we do know there are sturgeons in Loch Ness, so.
Yeah, there's been a few things. I mean, there's seals as well, which a lot of people don't realise that the seals get there, which is quite impressive because they've got to get through a canal to get into it.
Well, people don't realize there's like a little river, a Ness River, that flows into Loch Ness. Most people think that Loch Ness is an isolated lake that's shut off. I mean, it is technically shut off from the ocean, but there is some water sources still coming into it.
I mean, it's a beautiful place. Like you mentioned earlier, Robert, I've been fortunate to visit Loch Ness,
Isn't it?
and I've actually been on Loch Ness as well on one of the trips. And the thing that strikes me about it is the depth. It's incredibly deep. I mean, the parts of it are deeper than the English Channel, which is mind blowing for a landlocked loch.
It is. I mean, what is it? I think 900 feet is at the deepest point. For a while there, they didn't even know how deep it was. I remember as a kid reading an issue of National Geographic, they didn't know how deep it was. But I think now they've determined, I think it's like 900 feet deep at the deepest point. But still, 900 feet, I think the only lake that I know that's that deep is Crater Lake here in the United States. That's supposedly really deep, too. But I don't think it's that deep.
Yeah.
On that.
And obviously, Crater Lake is another area synonymous with weird stuff going on.
The Great Lakes? Oh yeah.
Yeah, there's some very. I mean, they are a whole range of strange things go on across the Great Lakes. I've seen many a story about ships just absolutely vanishing because it's such a. It seems to have its own weather system, completely independent to anything else that's going on.
Lake Superior does have some. It's hard to predict the weather with that Lake Superior. That's correct. I mean, I've heard that from some Coast Guard friends of mine that were stationed out there. And he said it's very hard to predict that weather there. And they have had numerous calls to go out there and help people and boats getting lost in storms and stuff. And it does have a reputation of, having its own Bermuda Triangle out there.
Yeah, well, you're more likely to disappear over the Great Lakes than you are over the Bermuda Triangle.
Yeah, there hasn't been any disappearance in the Bermuda Triangle for a long time that I know of.
Yeah, I think I was talking to somebody about it the other week, and I think when we looked into it, I think there's been 2 boats and 2 ships in the last 20 years. And that's it.
It's been a long time. It seems like right after the whole books and movies came out, nothing disappeared after that.
Maybe that's the coincidence. They were aware they'd been rumbled, Robert, and they moved. Well, whoever was responsible.
Oh crap! They know about this area. We're going to have to switch and go over to the Great Lakes now and start snatching people up there.
Oh, brilliant! So, what's other than your book that you're working on the Skunk Ape, Robert? What's next on your agenda? What's got your passions flowing at the moment?
Well, I think I'm in the middle of that book, and I'm in the middle of doing a sequel to legend tripping called International Legend Tripping.
Ah, brilliant.
Yeah, where I'm going to branch out and talk about different legends in different parts of the world, and I'm trying to I'm having to get on the email and talk to people about certain rules in each country about camping and certain things like that. But anyway, that's what my the thing is. And I've been writing articles for David Childress, the gentleman that's on the TV show Ancient Aliens.
Yes.
He's also my publisher. He has a book called World Explorers Magazine, and I write articles for that. And I just completed an article on a world-famous animal collector called Frank Buck. A lot of people don't remember him. He was... in fact, he was one of the people they modeled Indiana Jones after. Yeah. He was back in the 40s, and he used to go to Malaysia and the Southeast and get animals for zoos. They did a TV series on him in 1982 called Bring 'Em Back Alive. Bruce Boxletter.
Yes.
He played him. It was only came on for about one season. And, But I remember reading some of his books as a kid. And I was talking to David about him, and he said, "Hey, could you do up an article about him?" I said, "Yeah, I can go find some of my books and write up an article about this guy." And doing reading a book about him, I think he may have actually come across an unknown primate accidentally. Yeah. When he was in Malaysia, Singapore, he was buying a large orangutan primate from these village people, and this thing was over 8 feet tall. And I'm thinking, well, I don't know any, orangutans that tall. So I, did the research on orangutans and find out that the six foot is about as big as they get. Yeah. So, Mr. Frank Buck may have actually had his hands on what they call the Orang Pendek. Yeah. But unfortunately, when he was transported back over to the United States, the animal got sick and died on the way over. And back in those days, in the 40s, if these animals died, they threw them overboard. They threw their dead carcass overboard. So, unfortunately, we're never going to find out just what it was that he actually had. But anyway, that's some of the stuff that I'm doing. I've got a couple conferences I've been invited to go speak to, so I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. Excellent. So, in regards to that then, are you planning on doing any field trips? Are you planning on visiting anywhere in the world for that, Robert, or are you just going to sort of...
Yeah, right now I'm just waiting for it to cool off a little bit. But right here in Florida, the mosquitoes are terrible. I mean, even if you get out there, they'll eat you alive. So it cools off, and I've got a couple trips that I'm planning to go on out with some people. We're getting some canoes together. Again, I have to watch what I do. I can't go walking around a long way, and I've told friends that I can't put a big backpack on and go walk for miles in the back of the woods and stuff. So I have to kind of, be careful when I'm out there right now until I can, I totally heal up.
Yeah. So you're still just ongoing recuperation then, Robert?
Yeah, I am. I'm doing what the doc tells me to do. But I still get out there. I still, there's a lot of areas I can get to and just walk around, without going too far from my vehicle. I can go swimming and stuff like that. I just can't put a backpack on and go rucking, miles and miles and miles back in the woods anymore. Yeah. Not right now.
Yeah, well.
Maybe I'll get better in the future.
Well, but fingers crossed, yeah.
My wife's starting to put together a list of stuff she wants to go check out. And whenever I get a little break from my daytime job teaching at a high school, we'll probably look at maybe taking some trips and stuff like that and go check out. We need to get over to the West Coast. I haven't done hardly anything over in the West Coast, and I need to get over there and go look at, there's a lot of things I want. I'm like Alcatraz. Yeah. I've always go out to. I mean, supposedly my mom told me I've been out there when I was a baby.
Yeah.
But that doesn't count. You know? But I want to go back out there again. I understand they offer some paranormal investigations out there too.
Yeah. There's many a strange story in regards to Alcatraz. Not just obviously the alleged escapees. There's a history of very strange interactions in what was the former prison.
Yes.
Numerous people seem to have had some rather frightening experiences out there, Robert. So it's probably ripe for another trip there, my friend.
I hope so. I'm looking forward to it.
Right. So listen, before I let you go, where can everybody catch up with your work and keep an eye on everything and find out what's happening in the world of Robert?
Well, I mean, I keep active on Facebook. I got Robert Robinson Legend Tripper, and that's pretty much the one that I put everything that I got going on that one. Mm-hmm. Plus, if I find any articles on stuff out there, I put it out there for people to help them go do legend trips. Mm. You can get my book on Amazon, Legend Tripping: The Ultimate Adventure, mm-hmm. and it's published by David Childress, and his company is called Adventures Unlimited Press, and it is published over in Europe. Yep. And if you ever have a run into me in one of these conferences and you bought a book, please bring it and I'll sign it. And if you email me and stuff and with some stories and stuff, that's great. I love to hear new stuff. And again, I'm doing international legend tripping. So for you folks over there in Europe, if you, by all means, if you got some stories you want to tell me, please email me. I'd love to hear them.
Fantastic. Well, listen, Robert, thank you so much for your time and conversation today. It's been fascinating and wonderful to finally speak to you.
Hey, thank you. And just to throw this out there, I'm a Def Leppard fanatic, by the way. He's at Sheffield, and I'm a Def Leppard. Yes, I love Def Leppard.
Oh yeah, well, weirdly enough, my uncle was originally a drummer in a band called Saxon, who were a very famous, one of the first British rock bands. And after he left the band, he went to work for Def Leppard for a number of years as their chief roadie. So I've got a lot of time for Def Leppard because they're a good bunch of lads.
Oh, so, they are. I love their music. I didn't want to throw that out there. When you said you were Sheffield, I said, oh, Def Leppard.
Very much so. Well, listen, Robert, thank you again for your time and your trouble today. It's been lovely to have a chat with you. All the very best with the new books. I'm looking forward to reading both of them, and they can't come out soon enough. So thank you again for your time today. You take care.
Yeah, you too, and thank you for having me on.
My pleasure. Take care.
All righty.